Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon at the Kolkata Literary Meet, talking to Francesc Miralles. Francesc, I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank
Francesc Miralles.
Okay, wonderful.
You said better than many people I don't know from
wonderful.
Madrid.
I practiced a lot. So, Francesc, everyone here in this audience perhaps also knows you very famously as the author of your last book, The Ikigai. And, you know, we've all sort of read that book and fallen in love with the concept that you have outlined there. And, you know, what I found more interesting was also that so many people that I speak to and I meet have told me that they've started their own journey of finding their Ikigai after reading that book. So today we are here to discuss your new book, which is The Four Purusharthas. And at this point, you have sort of delved into the Indian philosophical thought and traditions to outline what you say is a path to success, meaning, and purpose, using the concept of the Four Purusharthas, which is essentially what all of us, or for many of us, this is something we've grown up hearing, which is Kam, Arth, Dharma, and Moksha. So, you know, as an Indian, as someone grown up in this culture, we've all been sort of implicitly aware of these concepts. But talk us through a little bit of how you interpret them, and how do you suggest one finds purpose in life using this framework?
Yes, thank you. We can talk a bit about the history of this book. Actually, it started because Ikigai was extremely popular in India, and during the pandemic, maybe with Hector Garcia, we did like 200 interviews with Indian forums, universities, students, women who are entrepreneurs, different groups of people, and many of them said, why don't you do something like Ikigai but about India, and you bring the wisdom of India to the world beyond the specialized books about spirituality, about a certain guru or technique. And then what we wanted to do was to summarize 5,000 years of wisdom, including the recent masters of technology, in one book. So the book was called Namaste, all around the world, in Spain and in other 30 languages. But the American publisher said that it was not possible to put this name because it was too simple. Let's think of something different. And then in United States and England was the four-way path. And in India, the Four Purusharthas. And Hector established the connection between the Ikigai and the Purusharthas through the circles. Let's remember that in Ikigai we have 4 circles: what you love, what you are good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. 3 of these circles are quite similar, especially 2 of them, to the Four Purusharthas. Kama has to do with pleasure, with senses, with happiness. So we could establish a relationship with the first circle of Ikigai, what you love. So first thing that you need is to learn to appreciate beauty and to learn what you love above all. And Arth, that you have commented, is what gives you money and prosperity, and what gives you the possibility of sustain your life. And we have the third circle of Ikigai, that is the circle of money, what you can be paid for. Moksha and Dharma are very complicated concepts, but there are some relationships. And because of that, we decided to include an extra chapter relating the Ikigai circles and the Four Purusharthas. And Mr. Shashi Tharoor, he curated the book, he liked it very much, and he wrote this forward. And so that's the book we have right now.
Right. And do you see both these concepts, whether it was Ikigai or through the framework of the Purusharthas, are they 2 sort of alternative ways of reaching the same end goal, or do you see them as complementary?
Actually, we must think that Japan has the same roots than Indian philosophy. Actually, what the Japanese have done is taking the ancient spirituality and making a sophisticated way to sell it to the world. For instance, it's very famous, the Zen Buddhism, the Zen philosophy. But actually, everything comes from Siddhartha Gautama and this knowledge came to China in a school called Chan, and Chan in Japan was Zen. So many things that we appreciate from Japan, from many other countries, they have origin in India. And because of that, we wanted to find 10, 12 key concepts so that everybody, every person can put in a practical way in your life so that you can live better.
Okay, thank you. So which brings me to this question I had. You know, how did you navigate, Francesc, you and Hector both, the complexity and the plurality of the Indian philosophical thought? Because, you know, for someone, as I said before, having grown up in this culture, you know, some of these concepts, whether it's you talk about karma, you talk about detachment, you talk about moksha, nirvana, all of these are slightly intimidating concepts, and there is a lot of literature. So yes. How did you navigate that complexity? And the beauty of this book is that you made it simple yes. and relatable. That's
the key of everything, that we didn't want to make literature out of that. With Hector Garcia, when we write a book, we have a goal. And our goal is it must be understood by the hairdresser and the taxi driver. If the hairdresser and the taxi driver does, then maybe there is a taxi driver with a degree in philosophy. It can happen. It happens sometimes. But if a normal person is not able to understand what we explained here of karma, is that we didn't do well our job. So for instance, let's take the concept of karma. There are very deep books and essays about that, about what means karma beyond different generations. But for us, karma is the law of cause and effect. And what we wanted to do was to give a practical approach of how we can have a better karma in this life, not in the next life, in this. So how can we be aware of what we do that is not so good for us?
So talk to our audience a little bit also about these two other very practical ways of understanding these you know, esoteric concepts that I really enjoyed. One was, you know, the philosophy of Advait. It is a very sort of complex, again, deep philosophy. And I sometimes find that whenever I have read about it in the past, it has come to me and then it has lost. Advaita.
Advaita.
Okay, we call it Advaita.
No,
Advaita.
You pronounce it in the nice way.
Right.
Because in Spain, because we don't know the pronunciation of words, we say Dharma, Karma, Advaita.
Right. And so you explained Advaita or Advait as a state of flow. And that is something very accessible to people like myself. So could you explain that a little bit?
Because when we were studying Advaita, that we thought it was pronounced Advaita, we were looking also to the modern interpretations of that. And now there is the London School of Advaita with two authors that are very representative. One is Tony Parsons, and the other is called Richard, I don't remember the surname, that they have made more accessible this philosophy of the non-duality, of how can you flow with life without defending your ego. So we found through this modern school of Advaita an easiest way to explain it.
Right. Okay. And you talk about Buddha as being one of the first psychologists.
The first one, I think.
The first one. Mm-hmm. So please tell us a little bit about that and how you bring that perspective into the book about, you know, collective versus the individual.
Because there are many different schools of Buddhism, and some of them are religious, some others not. Zen is totally like, there is no connection with God. But if you read what Buddha said in his speech, he was talking only about the human mind, only that. So he was working about what happens with suffering, what happens with desire, what happens with attachment, how can we think in another way so that we don't suffer, so that we can be more free. And because of that, I consider that the topics he investigated are the same ones that the modern psychology is approaching. So in a self-help book written nowadays, there are many concepts that Buddha already explored 2,600 years ago.
Very interesting. So this brings me to the next question, and maybe this I'll be sensitively phrasing it. Does it seem to you then that with religion, faith, spirituality, and psychology, it is a sort of continuum, and in this modern world, in our desire to be sort of away from the dogma of religion, we've sort of abandoned the spirituality aspect of it, and we have psychologized up our spiritual problems to the point that it's a medical sort of approach,
Yes.
and we have this, it's an epidemic of anxiety and isolation. So do you think some of it is because we are getting a little disconnected from a spiritual?
I think psychology is the new spirituality. So when my grandfather was a child, if somebody had a problem, they went to the priest, they went to the church, and they made confession of what was not good for them, and their wishes and desires, and the priest was saying, okay, make a prayer of this and that. This was the old way to have therapy about human issues. But nowadays, I would say that this role is played by psychologists, therapists, coaches, gurus of different kind, like Tony Robbins. So actually, the mission is the same, to understand human mind, understand your inner life, and to clarify that so that you can have a more authentic life. But we do it without God. But it's also possible to be religious and to find this kind of inner peace. Actually, these are different ways to the same questions.
So tell us a little bit, Francesc, about you grew up you said you went to a Catholic school, and Hector also was Catholicism. What was your own experience of religion and spirituality, which led you to asking these questions and going on these, quests, as it were? Even with Ikigai, you described how travel was really a big part of how you discovered your Ikigai.
Yes, actually, we went to Catholic schools, but we didn't practice very much in the church. So when we were children, we were going there. But after that, I think we have been much more interested in philosophy, psychology, in biographies of people who are interesting because they have a different point of view in reality. And I think our path as writers and essayists started with traveling. Héctor García comes from Valencia, and when he finished his studies in engineering, he went to the CERN, that is the investigation place in Switzerland where they are with quantum mechanics. So they have this accelerator of particles. And he was working there analyzing data. And from there, he established in Japan where he worked with the beginning of Twitter and many things, many technological things. And also, my exploration started also traveling. My first trips were in Europe, but then I could travel in 1999 to India, to China, to Japan. And so part of my life and my work has been learned by the common people, going to the places, having conversations, reading books, and understanding other perspectives and writing them in books.
That is beautiful because it requires travel and encountering new cultures that opens your mind in ways that perhaps, when you're in the same context for a long time, perhaps that doesn't lend itself, or you might become immune to that. So do you consciously sort of explore new cultures, or is it as it happens for you?
No, it was my first Ikigai, if there was one when I was very young, was traveling only. So I volunteered in many organizations, in many NGOs, so that I could, travel to the north of Europe, Finland, Switzerland, and I participated in many projects because I wanted to travel, I wanted to know new people, new projects, other points of view. So I was always very curious, and this curiosity brought me to travel a lot, and traveling so much made me an author. I started writing about these things.
And you said you've been coming to India since 1999, and the other evening when we were talking, you said you've experienced a profound change.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's a quite totally different country, totally different world. So many people who have never been in India, they talk with images of what India was 70 years ago. For instance, you say Calcutta, and they think, many people, that Calcutta is Mother Teresa and people with lepra. But maybe it still exists, I don't know. But this is not Calcutta. Calcutta is a normal city with culture, with people, with businesses. But there are these prejudices. First time I was in India, it was 1999. I spent some time in Mumbai. I was very surprised that the animals were part of the vehicles in the street. So I was in Colaba Causeway, and there were a lot of elephants, all kinds of animals transporting things, boxes and fuel and all this. And I was very amazed with that. You go nowadays to Mumbai, and it's more modern than Barcelona. Everything is highways, new buildings. There is extreme progress. Also, there are some problems like pollution, but that India is closer to the idea of India of Rudyard Kipling to what India is really now. And I think people who never travel to India, they don't understand what the country is.
So then, as an outsider sort of experiencing a new culture, the lens you use of an outsider looking in, how do you think that helps you? And without falling into any sort of stereotypes or typecasting, because there is a lot of typecasting around Indian spirituality, right? Where, you know...
Yes, first of all, we should talk about Indian spiritualities in plural, because all the religions of the world are here. If you go to Fort Cochin, that I will go in a couple of days, there is a Jewish quarter. There were Jewish people living there, and there is a synagogue. If you go to Goa, you will see very important places of Christianity, even saints that are buried there. So, and Taj Mahal is a Muslim building, and there are so many places of Hinduism. I remember my second trip in India, it was quite long time in Pushkar, and I saw how the pilgrims are there. So we must think of a cradle of spiritualities, and that all of them are very different. There is nothing to do a Jain person with a Muslim, with a Christian, with a Jewish. So what is amazing for a traveler in India is that all these influences can be together with a street of distance. And that makes the idea that you are not visiting a country, that you are visiting the whole world.
That's amazing. So why do you think that is, though? Why do you think this is possible in India? These multiple plural
because I think
identities?
Indian people is very tolerant. In other places, for instance, in Spain, we expelled the Jews in 1490, more or less, and there weren't Jews anymore in 300 years. And in other countries, there are other kind of extremism. And I think that Shashi Tharoor explains it very well, because Hinduism has so many gods that maybe they are thousands or millions, I don't know. It's not a religion that we can understand easily if you are not from here. So this integrative system of Hinduism makes that it's possible that you can take influences from many other places. And because of this, India has this particularity of gathering so many points of view about God, transcendence, and all this.
So, yes, and I found that in your book when I was reading, and I was amazed at what you were able to do, which is to pick, you know, from this vast sort of culture and complexity, you were able to pick a few concepts and thoughts and put them in a way that spoke to a very wide audience,
yes,
which you said was your mission.
And with the influence of the pop culture. For instance, we talk
yes.
about karma, and I talk about the song Instant Karma of John Lennon. Or I talk about a Radiohead song called Karma Police. And then we take a line of this song, and we can make a bit of theory of how can you apply karma in your daily life. Or we talk about sadhus. Actually, all the thing around being a sadhu is very complicated if you want to go very deep in the roots of that. But you can understand what does it mean renunciation and giving up. And then I talked about On the Road, the Jack Kerouac novel, because actually the background is the same. It's going away from your normal life, from security, and go to the world to discover your inner wisdom and the wisdom of the world. So we tried in this book to establish a lot of links with modern things so that maybe it can be attractive for young readers, for instance.
Absolutely, and it is. I also thought the structure of the book is very interesting. So it has these three distinct parts. And in the first part, you talk about the culture of happiness. The second, you're talking about the philosophy of happiness. And then in the last, you say this is the, you call it the practice of happiness. And the part that is the practice of happiness has, the concepts that we are very familiar, that have traveled abroad as well very seamlessly, which is yoga, pranayam, meditation. And to me, sometimes it seems that these concepts and these philosophies have, these concepts have been very easily and seamlessly fitted into the modern life. And it seems to me that, I feel like if I can do enough of this practice of happiness, I should have access to some amount of the happiness and some amount of the purpose that one is looking for. But it turns out in your book, you're saying that without engaging with the first two, which is the philosophy and the thoughts and ideas underpinning these practices, if you don't ask the big questions about who am I, if you don't get that slowness in your life to explore, then some of the benefits of this practice may or may not accrue?
Yes, because I don't think we should imitate the practice of a yogi or the practices of a monk if we don't understand what this person is doing. There is a reason below, there is a philosophy, there is a system of beliefs. And because of that, we have tried to do an introduction to all this. And you have mentioned something that is very important, that is self-knowledge. So every spirituality begins by knowing yourself. Because of that, I find the word namaste so beautiful, and we wanted to keep it as the word for the book, because among the many translations of namaste, is like a recognition of the divine essence of the other person and of yourself. And I think this is the beginning of spirituality, understanding that you are not different from a tree, from a city, from another person, from God. And when you start knowing yourself, you are knowing better the world.
Right. So if we know, and let's delve a little deeper into the Four Purusharthas themselves, which is, as you mentioned, you start the description with, I think you start the description with calm. Mm-hmm. Then you talk about dharma.
I think it's calm, dharma, arth, and moksha in the end.
And if you were to sort of look at how societies are structured, modern societies are structured, and what do we prepare for in our youth, in our preparatory phase of life? And to me, is that okay?
Something happened? No.
Okay, we're fine. So to me, it seems we spend a disproportionate amount of time preparing the young people of our societies in the pursuit of the two, essentially, which is earth in terms of career, how will you resource your life, and to an extent calm, which is what do you like to do? What is it that gives you pleasure? Do that as a way of, the basis of your life. So it is overwhelmingly, it seems, these two aspects. The dharma aspect, we've sort of left it to the parents, to religion to an extent. What is the right way of living? What are the values? And at the other end of the spectrum, there is a legalistic view, like, the real consequences of real adharma is legal, be good or else. So we don't really do work as a society to develop the last two Purusharthas, which is dharma and the what do you call it in your book? The Mahapurusharth. The moksha is the final,
yes,
in some
the
ways.
Self-realization. So, because if we look at another system, that is the pyramid of Maslow, that is the pyramid of the human needs, there are different stages. There is the basic stage, that is the survival, when we need water, air, and food to survive. And then there is a need of security, psychological security, money, work, recognition. And in the top of the pyramid is the self-realization. That is to establish some deep connection with yourself and with life. And I think you can get there only if you have covered all the others. And so maybe there is 10% of humanity that is in self-realization, but the other people maybe are still trying to get money, trying to solve problems. So it's a long way, and every person is in a different stage of the path.
Okay. So if we know what does it take to lead a good life or a life of purpose, you know, we've read the books, we have the tenets of spirituality, of religion telling us how to be good, what to do to be good. Why do you think it is so hard to then be good and do the right thing, or at least...
I think we are good and we are bad. Everything is in the same person. Normally, people say that I am kind, because if somebody wants a photo, I do it. But yesterday I wasn't kind. I was angry with the situation. It was nobody's fault, and I was shouting and I was saying bad things. So God, the angel and the devil are inside myself. So the thing is that if you know yourself, then you can understand what puts you in anger, and you can avoid it. And you can understand what is your Achilles foot. I don't know how to say it in. So I think that self-knowledge, what gives you is the freedom to choose how are you reacting to reality. Because reality is complicated, because things are not always easy, problems come, and there are people who are wise enough to put distance and to put relativity to that, and others who explode. So that's also a spiritual path, knowing yourself and knowing how to behave in these moments.
And do you also feel it is the essential condition of being human to just struggle with this balance? Like, how do you balance the Purusha?
Yes, the yin and yang of the Chinese philosophy of Taoist. The best and the worst is inside yourself. So what you are doing is to choose which way you are taking. It's like this very famous tale about the two wolves that you have. That is an indigenous American tale, I think. That there are two wolves inside every person. One is good and one is bad, and they are fighting against each other. And the boy asks to the master, and who is winning? The one you nurture more. So we have these two sides inside ourselves, and we must be aware to give the food, the spiritual food, to the good wolf.
Interesting. I'll stop with one last question from my side, and we'll, I think, open the floor to questions, because there will be many questions for you.
Thank you.
So the last question I want to leave you with is, what's next for you? Do you have a plan for a next sort of deep dive into a...
Actually, my life is lived only in a daily basis. My plan is going to Fleury this afternoon, and tonight going to Peter Cat.
Okay, great. That is, I'm sure, going to engender good karma for you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Francesc. And with that, I want to start the question-answer session. Can we have the first question, please? Can someone give the mic?
Hello, sir. Sir, I want to ask, what is your approach of simplifying the so complex and sophisticated concepts? What is your approach?
Our approach is that everybody can access to the philosophy of 5,000 years of Indian wisdom. Because the problem of the books of spirituality, I had read many books when I was 17, 18, but I had the education, I was in university, I had the time, and not everyone has so much time. Maybe there is somebody who is working 10 hours a day, and they have half an hour to read a book in the bus, and they need that you put it a bit simple. So our idea was taking complicated ideas and bringing to everyone, even knowing that you will have only an introduction. If you live, I don't know, in China, and you read the Four Purusharthas, and then you are interested in the thing of karma, and you want to go deeper, then you can buy other essays of real specialists about that. So our idea was to give a first trip, an introduction to everyone so that they feel a bit of the fascination we have for the Indian wisdom. Thank you.
Okay, just a few moments ago, you mentioned about Fleury's and Peter Cat, two of the well-known eateries in Park Street. So on the eatery section, which has been your favorite restaurant in Calcutta?
I haven't been in anyone yet. I've only been in the hotel. We are in the Taj. Okay. So these two will be my first experiences. The Fleury's, it was a recommendation of very young women who are working for the festival. They said you should go there for coffee. And the Peter Cat, I know it because I was in the Chennai book fair, and there was an author that has written a book called 7 Legendary Restaurants in India. And one of the 7 legendary is Peter Cat. But there are people from here who say, don't go there. Yes. I don't know.
There'll be as many recommendations as there are people in this audience. Next question.
Bienvenidos, señor Miralles.
Muchas gracias.
Tengo una pregunta, pero en inglés.
Muy bien.
What attracted you to Eastern philosophy, and how did you absorb these Eastern philosophies, Japanese and Indians?
I think the Westerners in Europe and in United States, if you are interested in philosophy in general, Greek philosophy, there is one moment in which you look to the East, because actually when we talk about the axial era, it was a time in which the same ideas we found in the Greek philosophers, in China with Confucius and Lao Tse, and in India with Buddha. So it's like going to the source. So maybe when I was 16, 17, I started interesting myself in India, and not only in the ancient one. By that time I was reading a lot to Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and in the beginning I was a bit angry because I said, this man speaks about many important questions, but he's giving no answer. But that's the point, that he doesn't want to give an answer. He wants to teach us how to think, how to have a critical thought. And I would say that maybe Krishnamurti was the first important master from India that I had by my readings. After that, I read about Ramana Maharshi and other older masters, but it was always a place of inspiration. When I felt lost, I looked to the East. Thank you.
Sir, I wanted to ask you that what brings or inspired you to add this tree in the book cover of your Ikigai book?
Yes, the book cover of Ikigai, the American one, that is this, the English language one, we didn't do it. So it was a very nice job of Penguin USA that they made something very different from the original. The original in Spain was white and red, like paperwork. And they decided to take this part of the sakura tree that is very symbolical, and they created a quite aesthetic thing. So we are very happy to this artist that we don't know exactly who this person was, but this image has become iconic. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, it's been so interesting listening to the entire conversation and so much to learn and understand. My question to you is that Purusharth, Purush in Hindi means man and Arth means the meaning. So, and Istri means the woman and Arth means the meaning. So Purusharth, is it only the meaning of life for men and not the women? Why is it called Purush Arth?
I think that if this word had been invented today, it would have been much more inclusive. But it happens with the Spanish language a lot, that there are many generic words that are masculine, but include woman and men. And so many women don't agree to keep this same form. So I am sure that if the concept of Purusharth was designed today, they would have found another word.
Thank you very much. I found it very gender specific. There's another question I had on my mind, and that is that you think Lord Buddha is a psychologist.
The first psychologist.
He renounced the world. He left his family behind. So I would really like to understand, in what terms do you think of him as a psychologist?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I think of him as a psychologist, not because he had a consultation that he didn't have, but that's true that to come to this truth in the end, to this illumination, he had to run a life a bit of a sadhu, because in the beginning he was in a way of renunciation, not eating, meditating a lot of time, mistreating his body. So he was renouncing to every pleasure and to every health, trying to find a way to suffering. But when he realized of his main structure to understand human suffering, this is psychology. Maybe he was not a psychologist like what we understand from a movie of Woody Allen with a psychoanalyst and his client. But the results he found in the end, the theory of Buddha, is totally psychological, because it's not based on God or in reincarnation. It's based on understanding how the human brain works and everything what has to do with the human being, our desires, our attachments, our expectations. Because of that, I tell it. Thank you. Very good question.
Hello. I'm a follower of Jiddu Krishnamurti, and I almost visit Sanan every year because later on in his life he settled over there in Switzerland. I take a pleasure to, I feel that entire aura, does something to my senses. That's besides the point. But I remember him giving a lecture over here in the year 1981. In this very place. Yes.
In this place?
Yes,
wow.
yes.
That's a honor.
Where I met him first.
81.
Yes. And that's where I started learning. I was very Hindu, as in, you know how Hindus are, stoic towards Hinduism. But that is where the transformation took place. Now, today's world, we are seeing the digital world is going and mapping the entire universe. Is billions of planets are hanging out there. For whatever reason, so who has made it? No answer. We name it the omnipresent. We say God. What do you feel, your suggestion? It is the purpose of life.
For me, what is the purpose of life?
Yeah, for all of us.
For myself or for human being? I think that every person in this world will find a different purpose, but basically, if we explore all these purposes, all of them are the same. When we were doing a lot of workshops with Ikigai, visiting many schools, visiting young people, one said, I want to write books, I want to make people happy with my music, I want to be psychiatrist or doctor, I want to solve this or work with ecology. All the purposes, really, the final goal is to help other people to live better. I think so. So you can do that through music, through writing,
Very kind of you.
through therapy.
Absolutely correct.
Yes. So in the end, in the soul of every human being, there is the wish to make a better world, even if you do it in a bad way. The other day I was listening to Donald Trump's recognition speech. And he said, I want to be a pacificator. And I said, okay, that's a very noble purpose. And I think all of us, even if we are wrong, we go in that direction. We want to help, we want to serve.
Wonderful. One last question, please, for Francesc.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Good afternoon, sorry.
Good afternoon.
So, in your talk in the earlier part, you said the good and the bad is within me. So, as a human being on the spiritual journey, how do I take that call? What is good and what is not good? Like at any given point in time.
Yes.
I know anger is not good for me, but then.
I think that's a very good question. We can know what is good and bad according to the feedback we get from the others. If you are not good with your couple, because maybe you are too demanding or you are not understanding the imperfection of this person and you want this person to be somebody else, and this person has anxiety or is unhappy or is not living fully because of your prejudices, then you are taking the bad part of yourself. If you have a coffee with a friend who is sad because maybe he has lost his mother, and then you have a nice conversation with him, you make him laugh, and he's better, then you are using your best spirit. So in the end, what we can see is that the good or bad that we have reflects in the impact that our words and our actions have in the others. This would be basically the compass to understand it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for the wonderful questions. And thank you so much, Francesc.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Very nice conversation. Thank you so much. Good evening,
Thank you.
everyone. Jeetda for organizing the Kolkata Literary Meet year after year and bringing us all together to listen to wonderful authors. Thank you so much again.
Thanks to everyone. Namaste.